Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am your host, Mr. Kadish, the beleaguered, whatever that word is, producer of the Salty Nerd podcast and Salty Saturdays. Welcoming you. We're going to have a great show today. We're going to be talking about a little bit of political stuff because the election is just a couple days away, but it's not going to be too political. So if you're looking to get away from that stuff, don't worry. We're going to have like really interesting conversation, which I'm sure you're going to love. But first, I want to introduce my fantastic panel of nerds. Now, guys, Dutch Butters is feeling under the weather today. And he was like, oh, I'm so sick, I can't make it. So instead, we have the irreplaceable Culture Casino. How you doing today, Culture? Thank you for being here.
I'm great. I'm glad to be here. I hate that it's under such unfortunate circumstances. My brother, and always, Dutch Butters, being lost to illness is just, it's terrible.
Yes, it's just he has big stinky shoes to fill for sure, but you are up to the task. So appreciate you filling in for the last minute. But we will try to make up for Mr. Butters' saltiness, even though he will be absent from the stream. But Brian from the Popcast, he's salty enough for everyone. How you doing, Brian?
So salty. I taste salty. I bleed salt. I'm here. I'm here for it. Good to be here. Good to see Alan again. I haven't seen him for a while. How you doing, man? And good to see Culture. Always good to see Culture with that fantastic beard. I'm competing with you, and I'm so far behind. I'm not gonna make.
Well, I'm gonna let you catch up, brother, because I have to like chop it off so the dermatologist can look at my face.
Yeah. Here we go.
I'm not gonna do the whole deal, but I'm gonna be losing like probably a few inches. So
I'm gonna win by medical.
Yeah, wow.
Medical exception, yes.
Right. There you go.
Culture. I don't think I've ever seen anyone be able to grow a beard as fast as you.
True.
You're just there. You're just
there. Same thing with this stuff too back here. The salad that's in the back there. Yeah. That's great.
And I'm very jealous.
Nah, you're fine. I actually, you know what? It seems like you have less work to do every day.
It's time true. Savings. I have a very consistent look. Yeah. But guys, we have an actual journalist on the call today. Alan from Film Threat. Good to have you here, Alan.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me and finally finding a time on a Saturday morning that I actually have available.
Oh yeah, like scheduling guests for live streams. The highlight of my week, always.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you contacted me last month, early October, and it's like I'm fully booked for the next 5 Saturdays.
But you guys do really fantastic live streams over on Film Threat. It's good to see that Chris seems to be doing better health-wise, and he's, on the live streams and stuff like that. So you guys, fantastic live streams over on Film Threat. Love you guys.
Oh, thanks. And I just want to say I'm down with the democracy. So.
Down with democracy, yes. Speaking of love, we have Tom Connors Jr. joining us after finishing his breakfast. How you doing, Tom?
I am not. And I was not told that Culture Casino was going to be here.
Well, he was a last-minute fill-in for
Mr.
Putters.
Kind of in my contract. You're supposed to let me know. But,
yes.
Specifically Culture.
Would you actually
just Culture Casino?
Would you actually have been on time had you known?
No, I wouldn't have showed up at all.
That's what I figured.
Well, you already didn't show up last week, so you're contractually obligated to be here at least a couple times a month.
Talk to my lawyer about it.
But how are you doing today, Tom? How are things over at Midnight's Edge?
Tired, busy. You know how it is. I don't know if Andre dropped a video today or not. I did one last night, so I don't know.
Right on.
Something about the down with democracy.
Down with democracy. Who's down with democracy? Yeah. And guys, for those of you out there wondering where Odin is, Odin will be joining us. Again, he has children that he has to put down so that he has the free time to join us for the next 2 hours, but he will be here. So
Mr. K,
I love putting down kids, calling them snot little shits and all that stuff. That's my favorite thing.
Well, no, I think it could be far worse than that, because wasn't the terms for putting down animals? That sounds bad.
So this ain't New York, motherfucker.
Yeah, but every time somebody says it might be, they just put down squirrels and other animals apparently.
Household pets, yeah.
I think he just loads them up with NyQuil.
Yeah. when they're not pooping. So we got to remember that. But Odin will be joining us soon. But the people who are joining us today, hopefully, are our biggest contributors. So we have Scotty Dub, who's our top super chatter, and he's also our top contributor, back on top after a brief stint where Brian G dethroned him. But we appreciate both Scotty Dub and Brian G. And of course, William Forbes taking up the third spot as our top super chatter. And our most consistent super chatter is the one and only Mexican Iron Man. He always likes to pop in and throw a super chat our way. So I really appreciate Mexican Iron Man for his consistency. And also, we've already got some gifters in the chat today, and we will get to them in a second. But want to shout out our top gifters, Jillian and Bob Dorsey, Sam Schwager, Major Chai Chai, and Eric Winberg. I see a couple of you in the chat. We're going to get to you soon. But first, we have to get to the man, the myth, the pineapple on pizza legend, Odin from OMB Reviews. Finally joining us. Were your ears burning? Because we were literally just talking about you.
Oh, you were? I thought you were going to say, oh, man, this amazing thing. Speaking of amazing things coming right into the chat. But
we got to keep it humble. Got to keep it humble, Odin.
Yeah, I know. I need more shelves. I need more shelves in my room. That's what I need to do. But
the Lord
hey,
of the
sorry
shelves.
I'm late. Sick baby and toddler is doing toddler things. So
no problem. No problem. At least it's not a squirrel.
Oh,
safe.
gosh, I just heard about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, for
I don't
those
know
of
why
you,
I'm so pissed off about a squirrel, but I am. I'm really pissed off.
For those of you who don't know, there was a gentleman in New York who had a pet squirrel, raised the squirrel. It was, his baby. And New York police officers
TikTok star or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. They came in and basically euthanized the squirrel because the squirrel attacked them when they tried to seize the squirrel because it was an unapproved domestic animal. And this guy basically lost his lovely little baby squirrel pet because of bureaucratic BS in New York. And it was very tragic, very sad. I lost my beloved pet earlier this year, and I can't imagine going through what this guy did, where it was a healthy squirrel and it literally just came in and just killed it.
I know a guy that happened to. His name was John Wick, and a lot of people died.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, I want to get to Eric Winberg for gifting one Salty Nerd Podcast membership. This guy, every single stream, one Salty Nerd Podcast
Yes,
membership. Really
he's
appreciate you, Eric.
Individual.
He is. And speaking of excellent individuals, we also have Major Chai Chai with 5 Salty Nerd Gifted Podcast memberships.
Chai?
Yeah, Major Chai Chai. And then the queen of gifted memberships herself, Jillian N, gifting 5 Salty Nerd Podcast memberships. So we're already up to 11, which is crazy. But it's a good thing that we hit that early because at the insistence of Mr. Dutch Butters, our goal is 20 new memberships. So we just need 9 more gifted memberships to hit our goal this live stream.
2,000 memberships to hit our goal. Let's go.
Yeah, LFG, let's fucking go. Yeah,
let's go.
And guys, don't forget to clip and comment the live stream. So if you like what you hear here or you don't like what you hear here, drop it in the comments. And if you're on mobile or whatever, don't forget to clip your favorite moments and share them because they automatically appear on our homepage for people who want to watch the stuff that our audience clips.
Super
really
rad.
Fun. And guys, normally we redirect you guys to Mephisto's movie reviews after the live stream's over, but unfortunately Mephisto's sick today, so he had to call off his live stream. But never fear, because our very own Brian from the Popcast has his live stream going at 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern time. And you guys are going political, right? You're going a little bit more political.
Yeah, we're going full on political. We're going so political. We're gonna have to separate our live channel from our main channel just to be safe. That's how political we're going.
Dang.
Yeah. The gloves are off. We're just gonna go full tilt. We realize that the one thing Shay and I like talking about together, that's not Star Trek, and Star Trek's dead, is politics, and so we're just gonna go full tilt politics.
Full tilt.
Down with democracy. There you go.
Down with democracy.
That should be the name of your show, Full Tilt Politics. So,
yes, I like that.
Yes, it's good. Good. But guys, we'll be redirecting you over there. They're not going to start until 12:30, so you'll have a little bit of time in between this show and that show. But Brian needs to get his fancy software all booted up and stuff like that. So he needs a little bit of time in between. But be sure to check that show out because, Brian, we're friends, but I'm saying this in all sincere honesty. Your last political live stream that you and Shane did Chef's Kiss. It was really entertaining, really
Oh,
informative,
thanks, man.
really good. So I've been encouraging you to kind of like, start up the podcast IRL stream or whatever
And
you want
get
to call it.
canceled. You want
And
me to
get canceled. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That
Right.
way you'll have more time to work on my shit.
Right. That's what it is. I need you to get canceled so you have more time to edit.
Exactly. All right, guys. And real quick before we get going, we have our first super chat of the day. Splatoon for Trump for $10. The MSM is the only industry that deserves layoffs. They've destroyed America's mental health for the past 4 years. If they went under tomorrow, American culture will instantly heal. Fuck the Washington Post and the New York Times. Oh, yeah, we're going to be getting into that a little bit later at the top of the hour. But thank you, Splatoon for Trump. Really appreciate you. But guys, before we get going, y'all voting? Y'all participating in democracy?
All done and done.
100%.
This weekend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Election day.
Yeah, I'm doing
I'm
on
one of
election
those
day.
people.
Yeah, I would know. My wife was like, "Why didn't we vote early?" I'm like, I can say it's because I'm an election day guy, but really I've just been busy. So
Well, Super Tuesday is right around the corner. Go ahead,
Yep.
Culture.
No, I was just going to say this household, done and done. Everything's selected. All the neo-Marxism was crossed off. We didn't even look at it. We voted against all of it.
Yeah, guys, my wife, who normally doesn't vote because she just doesn't feel like it makes a difference, she voted this year.
Nice.
Yeah, every vote makes a difference this year. Every vote.
The real question is,
and-
what's going to happen in Nevada, Mr. Kadish?
Nevada,
I'll tell you this. This is my prediction, right? So, based off of the number of Trump signs that are publicly displayed, because in previous years people were afraid to put those out front. Second, Harry Reid's dead, and therefore
Yes,
his corruption political machine
Influence.
has been hampered, so to speak. And normally out here, basically what Harry Reid did, and he was the former Speaker of the Senate, or leader of the Senate under Barack Obama. Basically, he kind of like created this unholy alliance with all of the major unions in Las Vegas, in Clark County, right? You have like the hospitality union, you have, all these other unions that he kind of brought together. But the thing is, ever since he died, no one's really been around to kind of like consolidate these unions. And they're usually in the pocket of the Democrats, right? But this year, because of Trump doing the whole no tax on tips, and he got out there before Kamala said that, but he's also
a big deal in Vegas, dude.
Yeah, he's also no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, bunch of this stuff. The hospitality union, even though the leadership is still for Kamala, the rank and file people out here, the ones who are the waitresses and the servers and the busboys and the barbacks and all these
Real people.
Strippers, no tax on tips.
Woo!
They're all
Let's go,
like
the stripper vote. We got the stripper vote.
Exactly. They're all like, we're going Trump. Like I'd say 90% of the people out here that I've seen are in the Trump camp. So my prediction in terms of Nevada is that we've got this one locked up. Barring any cheating, the fact that Trump was able to siphon even some of that union vote away means that he's winning. But he's also, I don't know if you guys saw earlier today, Ron Paul. Ron Paul is now part of the Doge office, Department of Government Efficiency.
Oh, perfect.
So he's going to be working with Elon Musk to dismantle all the inefficient parts of the government. So
all of it.
Yeah.
So it's a 98.5% of it, right?
So
We're
all
starting
the
from scratch, just like Elon did with X.
There's only one thing he could have done that would have been better. Name him the future head of the Federal Reserve.
We're just
well,
going
he
to fire
wants to get rid
everybody.
of he wants to get rid of the Federal Reserve, so that would be ironic.
Exactly.
But so basically, all the former Ron Paul independents and libertarians are now probably going to be voting for Trump. You have a lot of Silicon Valley tech bros who are publicly supporting Trump. That was something that was unheard of. You have free speech on X that's exposing all like the stuff that was formerly censored, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the episode.
Trump has a statement about peanut now too. Did you see this?
Yeah, I just saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
But
What if
but,
Peanut decides the election?
He's
It
That'd be
might.
phenomenal.
in the statement. He's
Between
like,
the
squirrel.
people eating
Yeah, that-
fucking animals and shit, as far as the immigrants and all that stuff, yeah, he might.
Like
In
it's
the
not
statement,
going
he
to
was like,
happen. But if New York went red And it's like, how did this happen?
that
And all of
would
a
be
sudden,
huge.
it's like
Squirrel.
Peanut the
Peanut.
squirrel. It's like, wow.
He was like,
Yeah.
if Peanut was an immigrant, it would have been given $500 in
Oh,
free
no.
housing.
That's basically what he
It
was
was
saying
great.
here.
It was
This is
great.
not even. You can't make this shit up.
But guys, so yeah, Peanut was the squirrel that got euthanized, unfortunately. But out here, also the black vote and strongly the Latino vote, which is very heavy in Vegas. A large portion of those guys have been swinging towards Trump. So barring any like election shenanigans, which again haven't really seen out here, I think Nevada goes strongly in the Trump camp. So that's the long-winded answer to your guys'
Yeah.
stuff.
As far as California, we're not going to get any.
Yeah.
That's not going
We're
to
so
happen.
Harris. We're so into Harris. It's like
Oh,
I'll tell you
yeah.
this, for the last 8 years, I live in like conservative Orange County,
So do I. I live in Orange County. I didn't know you lived in
there
Orange
you go.
County.
but I've never seen a Trump sign until this year.
Yeah, you're right. My entire neighborhood is just Trump signs.
Mhm.
Well, I'll tell you
And-
though, I hope after the last few days, if the people haven't realized that the media is not your friend and it is your enemy, then I don't know what.
And we're going to be talking about that at the top of the hour. But real quick, more important in California than Harris, because it's going to go for Harris. Don't fucking elect Adam Schiff to Senate. I really hope that whoever's running against Schiff,
Exactly.
gets
It's
elected.
Steve Garvey, and nobody knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, real quick before we get into our stories, we got Foxhound for $1.99, £1.99. It's simple. Either Trump wins or the world loses. Definitely feels that way. Definitely feels that way. I like how Kamala Harris's closing argument was like, we need to make stuff more affordable. It's like, yeah, because of the last 4 years, like you guys have made things way more expensive. It's like,
But I wouldn't change a thing Joe Biden did.
yes, you're trying to solve the problems that you yourself created, and people want to vote for you because they want to kill babies. So that's always fun. All right, guys. So enough ranting about politics. I hope everyone goes out there and votes this coming Tuesday and votes the right way, hopefully. But speaking of the wrong way, let's talk a little bit about Star Wars, in particular, the new final Skeleton Crew trailer, because this show is premiering very soon. But it's basically Star Wars Goonies. That's always been the pitch from the very beginning. And they released their final official trailer a couple days ago on November 1st. And basically it's a 2-minute trailer. And I sat down, my first impression of this thing, and I'd watched the teasers before, so like I didn't go into this blind, but it felt very un-Star Wars-y at the very beginning. Like it wasn't until they got into the spaceship and like the different aliens and the robots and stuff like that that it kind of felt like Star Wars. But for the most part, it felt like you remember that old movie Explorers? Like it felt kind of like that, but it had like non-Star Wars-y music and had these kids and all this other stuff. And so like I'm kind of on the fence about this because it's very obviously Goonies, right? It's very obviously like they have pirates and all this other stuff. And Alan, you've been I shouldn't say you, but like Film Threat in general has been very critical about how Lucasfilm has been trying to turn Star Wars into a girl brand to its detriment. And with this one, it feels like this is another attempt to try to appeal to like a younger audience. But it's kind of funny because like there's no young white boys in this group. It's all women and one mixed race a boy. The actual trailer shows like his mixed race family. He has an African American father and a white mother. The only white guy in this is basically Jude Law, and he's not even like featured very prominently in the trailer. And I'm just wondering, like, because it feels, even though it's meant to kind of harken back to adventure and 80s movies and Goonies and stuff like that, it feels very DEI to me. And so like I'm hoping it's good. But even if it's good, it feels like it's going to be something that is an outlier when it comes to Star Wars. So, Alan, I wanted to get your take on not just the new trailer, but Skeleton Crew in general.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I'm less hung up on seeing white people in things. My whole point is if it's authentic to whatever it is, the culture, the IP, the lore, keep it authentic to it. Like I just saw a movie about World War II that had pre-World War II, where it's a town in England where you have the white people and the black people, and they're all getting along. When at that time they weren't getting along, and that it was all cast for DEI purposes. But regarding Skeleton Crew, I watched it. It felt very much like it was for kids. It felt very much that I'm not the audience for this, which is fine. If they want to make a kids Star Wars TV show, that's fine. And I think that's what they're doing here. I'll say that the quality looked good in terms of a lot of values, especially when you compare it to Ahsoka and to the Acolyte. Everything looks pretty good. And in terms of the story, the little story that I was able to pick up, it feels very much like kids' stories from the 80s and 90s. I think the best I could say about the Skeleton Crew is I'm fairly apathetic toward it. I don't see anything really that that worries me. I don't think it's lore breaking like the Acolyte was. It just, I think the biggest criticism would be, I think Disney spent way too much money on a kid show, and they're slapping the Star Wars label on it, and I'm not sure how Star Wars it's going to feel. So that's my general opinions of it. I'm cautiously optimistic. Well, I'll probably get like the first 4 episodes to view before it premieres, and we'll see.
Well, Brian, one of the beautiful things about the original Star Wars is that they were movies for all ages. You could be a little kid and enjoy them, but you could also be an adult and enjoy them. I feel like the art of making an all ages appealing piece of media in Hollywood has been lost over the years. It feels like in the 80s, they had that formula down pat, where you could take your kids to a movie in the 80s and the entire family could enjoy it. Pixar famously kind of dialed in on that formula as well, where parents could enjoy Pixar movies just as much as the kids could. And to Alan's point, it does feel like Skeleton Crew is aimed particularly at children, but that begs the question. It's why can't Lucasfilm make something for all ages, all genders, all races, and have people enjoy it?
Yeah, they can't do it. I don't think they even see certain genders and races. So it's hard to make something for something you don't see. I think the whole Goonies meets Star Wars premise, it's already been done, but not in live action. It was done with Prodigy. And it worked. And even if it was made for kids, I gotta tell you, I know a lot of adults that watched Prodigy, and that was literally a cartoon, and they enjoyed it. So, if the lore is right, even if it's made for kids,
I question if those are actual adults, though.
Okay, Tom. If the lore is right and they get some of the story stuff right, I think there's adults that will want to watch it. I think there's adults that have kids that want to feel like they did when they watched the original trilogy, and they'll be able to watch this with their kids. And as long as it doesn't have a bunch of messaging and it's actual Star Wars appropriate, then I think that it might be a win for them. I know I'm in the wrong camp, because Star Wars is dead, and it is dead to me. I'm not gonna be watching this probably. I might check it out for the stream, but I'm not interested. Unless I'm watching Alan's show and he's like, "Yo, this is actually pretty great." Then maybe I'll check it out. But I'm not gonna go out of my way. And what's crazy? I might get a screener too, and I'm probably not even gonna log into the screener account. So the thing is, a lot of people are turned off on this, but there's a lot of adults that have kids that used to love Star Wars that might give this a shot. So,
well, Tom, so this show is being produced by John Watts, who basically he did all the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. He recently did Wolves for
which
Apple
I enjoyed.
TV. I thought it was a great movie. This guy has a track record of making really good, entertaining films. So there's a little bit.
Star Wars don't though.
Yeah, Star Wars doesn't. So the question is John Watts going to be the deciding factor here in whether or not this show is good? What are you hearing? What do you think?
I don't know. At this point, I just watched the trailer and I just had the old Ian Malcolm thought of, are you going to have any actual Star Wars in your Star Wars? Because unlike you, I didn't see any Star Wars in this. This felt like Guardians of the Galaxy Junior meets Explorers meets Goonies. It was like everything but Star Wars, and this sci-fi elements in it felt generic. They didn't feel remotely Star Wars. The show might be fine, but it just feels so on the nose with Goonies and stuff, to where it's just like, you really copied their homework and didn't even bother changing any of it, really, right? I mean, the only big difference is okay, you got a more diverse group of kids, and as Brian pointed out, this is very similar to another idea we already had in Star Trek, so it's not like it's anything really new that's been explored already. So I don't know. I really never thought about the kids in Star Wars. I was never really interested in what kids were doing. I don't think anybody ever really was. That was one of the big turnoffs of episode 1 to begin with, is nobody gave a shit about Anakin when he was a little kid. Younglings, whatever.
Younglings.
People don't care, really, at the end of the day. Nobody even cares about Broom Boy. When's the last time somebody talked about him?
Oh, Broom Boy. Remember, he was the future.
Boy.
He was the future
Yeah.
of the franchise.
He was the future. He could still be. I'm still in the Wade camp, though. I want.
He's
Wade
going to
to
make a
get his own
cameo
origin
in
story.
this show.
He's
Yeah.
dead.
No,
At the
He's
end of the
never coming
day,
back.
I mean, it wasn't really made for us. None of the Star Wars stuff is anymore. So if it just happens to be good, I guess then that's a plus. But I mean, the only thing it has going for it, as you pointed out, is this John Watts, and I haven't seen him do anything else but the two things you mentioned. So we'll have to wait
I mean,
and
to
see.
Tom's point, is anyone under the age of 10 interested in Star Wars?
Anymore? I don't even know if 10-year-olds are.
Yeah, exactly.
50-year-old ladies sipping a wine
Well,
out of a box with their cats.
I'm
guys,
sorry,
you know,
pop music
they're
does
watching
not belong in
Agatha.
Star Wars unless it's
Yeah.
like, in Jabba's palace. You know what I
You,
mean?
you know what's funny is 2 days ago when Halloween was going on, I was handing out candy. Not a single Star Wars Halloween costume.
That says a lot, because you used to get
Yeah.
tons of Darth Vaders and stuff like that.
Not a single May or OSHA?
Nope, not a single one.
Not even a Boba Fett.
I saw a Padme and I saw a Rey. So I did see a Rey this year, but I saw a Padme as well. So
I didn't see a single one.
Did this kid actually want to be Rey, or did they get forced to be Rey because that's a cheap costume?
it was a younger girl, so I assume that she had wanted it for herself. The Padme was an older person, so
Oh.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
well, someone who grew up with the prequels, who was
Yeah.
the Padme. So
The jury's out on that one.
Well, Odin, I want to throw this to you because as one of the stewards of America's youth, you do teach in elementary school, I believe, or high school, one of those two things.
Mhm.
Do you think it's a smart idea for Star Wars to kind of segment down and be like, okay, we need more kids so that we can future-proof our franchise. So like, let's make more stuff geared towards children. Like, what do you think of their strategy?
I honestly still don't get it because, on paper it seems to make sense. They want to try to go after the younger audiences. They can get them interested in Star Wars so that they can try to maybe salvage something when it comes to this IP, because clearly they've run away a large portion of the older fan base, especially those who are fans of the original films, even the prequel era. Like, a lot of that audience has just left because of the nonsensical decisions that they've been making. So I can see on paper why they're doing it. The problem is that in order for those audiences that they're going for to be watching it, you need the adults to also be watching it, because that's how all fandoms are passed on. It's, hey, this is something I watched when I was a kid. Watch it with me, my young child, right? It's like, let me show you. It's like that rite of passage, right? It's now time for you to experience what I once experienced. That people then grow up loving things because they're like, hey, I grew up watching that with my dad or with my mom. So just trying to go straight for that demographic and that younger demographic when you've already lost that demo that is going to be the ones that provides the access to the new stuff, it's a non-winning strategy, because they'll just only appeal to the ones that are still hanging around, meaning they're not really going to grow their audience all that much.
And culture, like, this isn't the first time that they've tried to appeal to children, but I think it's the first like live action under Kathleen Kennedy's regime that has specifically been like, okay, we're making this for kids. But like, famously they had Star Wars Resistance, which was another animated thing that nobody watched because nobody cares about, like the sequel era. But we've also, obviously Dave Filoni has had a good run with like the Clone Wars and like all this other stuff. And a lot of kids got into that stuff because it was animated. But do you think that success in animation is going to translate over into live action?
Well, they haven't been able to prove that a lot of success can translate now under the new, guidance of the leadership at Disney, regardless. I think that their translation from the big screen to the small screen has been rather rough. If it started out on the small screen, I think it survived rather well, aside from, obviously the ones that you observed. But, in as much as there's potential here, I don't know. Somebody's going to have to argue with me about whether or not people just don't have Disney Plus out of convenience. I don't think they have it out of, that it's a have to have because of these specific shows. Disney hasn't been able to create, the staying power of an HBO or something similar, right? You don't have to have Disney Plus. You can just pick it up whenever. It's not a keep in the stable because you're going to get consistently good entertainment. And when it comes to Star Wars, it's not something you keep in the stable because you're going to have any good entertainment. So if you ask me if they can do it in the children's sphere, I don't know. Their number one, children's program right now, whether it be live action or animated, is Bluey. They don't even own it. So, do I have high expectations for them? No. Do I have high expectations for any television Star Wars? No. But you know what? Maybe they'll have a hit with kids. Maybe, making sense and looking like generic space adventure is a good plan. I don't know. I look, they've tried everything else. They've failed. You can't bring in Captain EO and Back to the Future and mix it with Altered Carbon and think you're going to have a good thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess in a sense, just visually Altered Carbon, not like actually transferring your stack or anything. But
yeah,
I don't have high expectations. That's the answer.
Well, I want to close this by asking Alan this question because it's curious. It's like, do you think at any point someone at Lucasfilm might say, hey, why don't we try appealing to our original fan base, the thing that carried us through decades of no movies, no TV shows and stuff like that, and actually give them what they want so they can then start bringing their friends and their kids into our fold again? Or have they just committed to, this strategy of, okay, we need to appeal to new audiences only because our current audience isn't going anywhere? What do you think about that?
Yeah. Star Wars is like, your old girlfriend finding a new lover. It's like, it was fun while we were together, but now have fun on your own. I just feel like it's just gone so far down the wrong road that to go back would require a oh my God, it was all a dream moment. I think you could have salvaged maybe Star Wars after the sequels, but the television has just been kind of ruining everything. And if you can somehow make everyone forget that television ever existed and just go back to cinema, but even then they've kind of ruined that. Because I think deep down the heart of Star Wars was Han, Luke, and Leia, and they have yet to create a trio that could replace them. And they have no new idea. Someone would really have to come up with new ideas for what the Empire is going to do next and why they're going to do it that way and why you need a rebellion. And last of all, an idea of what the hell the Force means now. Because you got an idea what the Force meant in the prequels and in the original. But it just, this idea of the Force now is just telekinetic powers. And so everything that we loved about Star Wars as children has just been watered down and bastardized. And I just don't feel like, unless you do some major reconstruction, there's no hope.
Well, if only Star Wars had source material to work from, Alan. That's the big difference here, is they're just making it up as they go.
books are just sitting there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Real quick, I want to get some super chats. Late Night with Cat Podcast, aka JT Gunn. Good to see you, JT, for $2. Hey, everybody! Watch Salem's Lot on HBO. 7 out of 10. I watched that. I fell asleep through it. It was okay, I guess.
I tried to watch it too, and it didn't work out. I gotta know what's good about it.
I don't know. I was gonna say everybody said they truncated the last half of the book so badly that I haven't even bothered with it. So
You know, Midnight Mass on Netflix is a much better Salem's Lot adaptation than anything that I think that they're putting
Well, this
out.
would be the third one we've had now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people forgot about the TV movie we had in the, what was it, 90s or early aughts, when they were redoing all those ones for, what was it, AMC or whatever it was. They did
Also,
The
like
Shining and a few other ones. Yeah.
J.J. Abrams tried to do like an adaptation of Salem's Lot with
Oh, that's
that,
right.
that weird Stephen King universe show that he was doing, and that failed miserably too. So weird.
Castle Rock or whatever.
Hey, yeah, Castle Rock. Shorty short for $2. Star Wars should only be centered on Jedi and Skywalkers.
I don't necessarily agree with that. There's other things you can get into, but this just didn't appeal to me. And I'm sorry, pop music doesn't belong in Star Wars. I said it already before, but that was one of the things that really turned me off right away. It was like,
Remember that R&B song that ended one of the Acolyte episodes?
no, because guess what? I didn't watch The Acolyte.
Yes,
Isn't
I
there a
remember.
Screamo one as well? Or am I thinking of a different show? These shows all blend together. I feel like there was like a big
Exactly.
Screamo song too.
Yeah. All right, guys. And The Seaman for $5. The problem is the people at Lucasfilm. Until the people creating Star Wars changes, it won't get better. It's very
Yep.
true. We need to make Star Wars great again, guys. That's the real issue.
Make
But,
Star Wars great again.
Yeah, but you know what else needs to be made great again is Twitch. And the question here that I want to propose to you guys is the world's biggest video game streaming platform dying? I came up with this topic for today's show because I recently, I'm a big fan of Devin Nash, who does Twitch streams about the creator economy, the streaming industry, stuff like that. And I find him to be very educational, and I don't always agree with him. But he had this gentleman on his show where he was basically kind of like talking about all of Twitch's woes, right? Stuff like, particularly the guy who's running Twitch right now, Dan Clancy. And they were kind of going through like, why isn't Twitch better than it is, right? And I started looking into this thing, and I know that if Dutch Butters were here, he'd be very passionate about this topic because he's getting heavy into the video gaming stuff. And I know Brian Culture, you guys are heavy into video game stuff as well. So I wanted to bring this to the panel. But the big thing right here is we got two stories. By the way, everyone, links to all the stories that we feature in this live stream are in the description if you guys want to do your own research. So Twitch lost 10% of its market share to YouTube and Kick. And overall, there's a concern that Twitch is at risk of becoming a zombie brand at Amazon. And what a zombie brand is it's basically a company that doesn't get any new resources or attention put into it. So it's just kind of there, right? It doesn't grow. It doesn't evolve. It doesn't really do anything except exist. And that's what the concern is about Twitch. And one of the interesting things when we start diving into this is that Dan Clancy has been trying really, really hard to get Twitch back up on its top game, right? Because for a long time, it was just very stagnant. And one of the things that they did was they got rid of their exclusivity clause, where it's basically like if you were streaming on Twitch, you were not allowed to cross stream to other platforms like YouTube or Kick, right? So one of the things that Twitch streamers really complained about was the lack of support for cross streaming and or simul streaming. And one of the things Dan Clancy did was he was like, okay, guys, we're going to give you what you want. We're going to remove this restriction. We're going to allow you to, simulcast to any other streaming platform you want. And from that point on, that's where they started losing market share because, a lot of Twitch's revenue is based around ad views and ad sales and stuff like that, which in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, just doesn't work for, the type of thing that they do. But they've lost viewers because a lot of these people prefer to watch on YouTube or prefer to watch on Kick and stuff like that. And so that hurts their bottom line of ad sales because they're losing eyeballs. But another thing that the Devin Nash video kind of brought to my attention is the fact that, and this is one of the things I disagree with Devin Nash about, is the free speech aspect of content creation, right? Where like Devin Nash's whole thing is like Twitch needs to ban politics and IRL streams. and just make it about gaming, because otherwise it's not going to be brand safe. Otherwise, like, they're not going to get advertisers and all this other stuff. And to a certain extent, he's right, but he's coming at it from a advertiser perspective. And I think that brand safety is way overblown. I think that brands want to make money, and therefore, if people are, if there's a creative or a popular creative, and maybe they're saying something controversial, whatever, the brand shouldn't care about what the person's saying. They should just care about who's watching that person and whether or not they're their ideal customer. And so this whole notion of brand safety, I think, is just a Trojan horse for censorship, essentially. Like that's all it's ever been used for. There's a lot of stuff to talk about here, but long and short of it is that Twitch, like, they're finally updating their mobile app, but the mobile app hasn't been updated for like 8 years. They're trying to put in more stuff that's kind of like similar to what TikTok does in terms of like GIFs and bits and all this other stuff. Also, a big thing that I was always scratching my head about is that they got rid of their Roku apps. Right, you used to be able to watch Twitch through the app on like your TV,
and because they weren't official.
Well, no, like after Amazon bought them, Amazon made the decision to get rid of the official Twitch app, or stop supporting it or whatever. But the biggest growth on YouTube has been in the living room. The biggest growth on YouTube has been in the TV watching.
100%.
And that's kind of where YouTube is putting more of its focus now. Instead of shorts, it's actually moving towards the living room experience, as they call it. And so Twitch completely dropped out of that market altogether, right? And I used to love watching, Twitch streams on my TV, because I'd, get home from work, I'd sit down, have dinner, and just watch my favorite streamer playing their video game, right? So like the question then becomes, it's like, okay, with YouTube and Kick kind of like eating up its market share and being slow to evolve, and whether or not, because like they aren't profitable, Dan Clancy has admitted that Twitch hasn't been profitable since the beginning. So like, how much money or time or effort is Amazon going to throw into this? Because live streaming has proven to be like, a big thing, right? It has the potential to make a lot of money. It has the potential to do a lot of good for society, in my opinion. But the question then becomes, it's like, okay, how do you make it work for big companies like Amazon? How do you make it so that content creators have the tools they need to create the communities that are going to be sticky enough to make it a viable ad platform? And so that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Brian, I want to start with you, because like you're a big gamer. You've watched Twitch. Like you kind of know a little thing or two about that culture. What do you think is the biggest problem Twitch is facing right now?
Stagnation, like you mentioned, taking the apps off of not just Roku, but off of any TV app. So like, there's different ecosystems for these different TVs, and Amazon wanted it to be on their Amazon marketplace or whatever that nobody uses, and doing that really removed a huge audience. So the only reason I ever watched Twitch was not to watch a streamer. It was to watch tournaments, right? Dota tournaments, Fortnite tournaments, League of Legends tournaments. I mean,
Hearthstone tournaments.
Yeah, even though it felt really gay to watch Hearthstone tournaments, sure. But yeah, I would turn on and watch tournaments. But finding the tournaments was difficult. Finding the right app was difficult. Finally, I found an app that was a third-party app that some guy created that basically just mimicked the website that you can use on, I think it was on Roku and Android and a couple other places. The Android Roku app for Twitch almost never worked. Streaming from your phone to the TV almost never worked. And it's because Amazon didn't care about those things. They wanted it to be inside their ecosystem. Well, then you see YouTube. And YouTube is constantly innovating in this space. YouTube starts doing the YouTube gaming thing. Then streaming becomes, it goes from like, it has a 6-hour cap to a 12-hour cap to a unlimited, but the archive is 12 hours cap. And a lot of these gaming companies like Valve and Epic and Riot, they were like, you know what, we've been streaming our tournaments on Twitch this whole time because that's the gaming platform. We're going to start streaming to YouTube too, because it seems like it's easier. And then over time, their own Twitch channels get a lot less maintenance and updates because YouTube is easier, because they get a lot more viewers on YouTube, because archiving is easier, because watching it after the fact is easier, because they make more money on YouTube. And Twitch just slowly dies. And I gotta say, they did it to themselves. I think Twitch should go bye-bye. I think there needs to be a better option in place. It's never been good. The streaming quality has always been sort of lackluster. There's always a little bit of a buffer. Their app has never been solid. And I'm so tired of a lot of gamers thinking they have to stream on Twitch when Twitch isn't going to get them anywhere. Established Twitch streamers are already good to go. But you want to find an audience on Twitch right now? Good luck. There's not enough people. Like, you should start on YouTube. That's the best place to start if you're trying to find an audience for gaming. So if it's a zombie company or not, brand or not, I'm pretty much done with Twitch. And the only reason I ever watch it now is because that's the only place to watch a particular tournament, and that's a rare thing now.
Well, culture, Amazon famously bought Twitch, right?
Mhm.
And everyone was really excited when that happened because it's like, oh, Twitch is finally going to get some like big money behind it. It could be a major competitor to YouTube. And I've always wondered why Amazon has been sleeping on the user-generated content stuff, because if there was ever a company that had the potential to rival YouTube in terms of like reach, in terms of support, in terms of like, serving ads or supporting creators or whatever, you'd think it would be like Amazon Prime, right? And Amazon Prime used to have a feature where you could actually upload like your own stuff, had to go through an approval process. But if Amazon were to integrate Twitch with its like Prime offering and actually have like, a section on like the Amazon UI where you could actually go and watch Twitch streams as opposed to like, having to go to like the Twitch website or whatever, I think that Amazon would really quickly start eating YouTube's lunch, because like they already have the infrastructure there and all that stuff. So why do you think Amazon is so reluctant to kind of embrace Twitch and just like kind of like let it do its own thing when it could be seriously integrating it with their own offerings?
I think that comes down to the fact that they just don't know what to do with it, Matt. I think everybody here would agree. When you look at what they do, where they do it, they haven't had any growth. Brian was, lamenting all the problems that you have when you're trying to do streaming over there. You don't have any of the amazing facilitation that Amazon could certainly integrate with the platform. Again, Mr. Kadish, if you were trying to make money with this, you would integrate it into your video product as you've suggested, and you would serve commercials right from the site while games are streaming. You would, you could have a free option down there, or, if you have a Prime account, you don't have maybe you don't have the commercial free stuff. Your commercials are just these banners at the bottom of these game streams that just flash up every 5 or 10 minutes, right? They don't interrupt the game flow. They just offer up maybe a product you might be interested in. They are one of the few platforms that distinctly could offer individual products to the people that are playing it. And yes, they could absolutely eat YouTube's lunch for a long time. The biggest problem is, and what I think happened, is when they acquired it, they didn't know what to do with it. They had an idea going in what they wanted to do with it, and then these, the advertiser guideline baloney sausage, the censorship that you were talking about just a couple minutes ago, was something that reared its ugly head. Remember, they wanted to manipulate the entire market and the entire country and anybody who invested money with them into only allowing certain things to be presented to them because they were the only things they were willing to present to them. An entire advertising cartel was eliminated by Elon Musk because the whistle got blown on them. You don't think Amazon and many others were a part of that hot mess trying to control everything? No, of course. But like I said, you're 100% right. YouTube could have its lunch eaten very easily by the fact that not only can they service their own ads, they can serve up exactly what somebody may be interested in on the other side of that television because it's tied to an account. You're literally streaming through your own individual account. You're not just collectively glomming on, with a little loose port connection. You are actually, you're actually buried within your own profile and everything that you've ever bought and everything that you might bought. You have a dialed in individual algorithm that could sell things like crazy. And again, it's not like they don't have the bandwidth. They have Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, Mr. Ning, one of the big complaints that YouTubers have is the cut that YouTube takes, right? YouTube has like a famous like 30% take on like super chats and, you know, like all that other stuff. And YouTubers are always like, oh, how dare they take so much of my money, my hard-earned tips. But over at Twitch, they're like, oh, it's 50%. So like all the bits that get bought, like Twitch takes 50%. All the subs, Twitch takes 50%. And famously, like they were even taking like even more than that at a certain point for like smaller creators. And one of the big issues that seems to be facing Twitch right now is this issue of like, you know, what should be allowed on the platform. There are advertisers out there who are like, we just want video games. We don't want anything that could potentially harm our brand. But then you also have like the IRL's, you know, section of Twitch, which is its most popular kind of category, where basically you have hot tub streamers, you have ASMR girls, you have basically like OnlyFan feeders. Like OnlyFan girls use Twitch to feed young horny boys into their OnlyFans as a loss leader. And you know,
The gateway drug.
it's the gateway drug to OnlyFans. And that's primarily what IRL is. And then you also have you know, streamers who get super political on there, like you know, like Hassan, Destiny, all these guys. And that becomes very, very kind of like murky, like when you start getting into hot button topics and stuff like that, that advertisers don't want to be associated with. And so the question then becomes, it's like, how much should Twitch be kind of like moderating its own platform? And you know, you have like the free speech model of kick.com, but that has its own problems, right? And it's primarily, you know, like, you know, we joked about being a gateway drug to OnlyFans. Kick is a gateway drug into gambling because it's financed by, you know, like a gambling site. But they allow anything to go on there pretty much. And so like the question then becomes, it's like, if Twitch's ad revenue or revenue model is advertising, right? Like, you know, it serves advertising just like YouTube does. How does it thread that needle exactly? Like what do you think about the whole brand safety argument when it comes to, you know, these online platforms as that being like their primary revenue model?
Yeah, I'm kind of two minds when it comes to you know, content on Twitch. I'll either go as far as say total free speech, apart from nudity, sex, you know, the truly bad stuff, free speech, or clearly define what community standards is. You know, I remember, look, the only reason I watch Twitch and know anything about it is because of the pandemic. That's all I was watching. And and then when the election came along, the 2020 election, it was, you know, people were just getting kicked off for no reason. You know, people were losing money for no reason. And the biggest complaint was nobody understood what the community standards were that they violated. And it also seemed like it was the community standards were arbitrary, were being changed constantly. And some conspiracy theorists were saying that it was changed to support one party over the other. So my thing is, either you go full free speech, or if you're going to regulate what kind of content goes on there, lay it out. You know, make it crystal clear that this is what's acceptable and this is what's not
You
acceptable.
can't move the goalpost.
Yeah. And if they and allow Twitch to be sued if they violate their own community standards, or if, you know, allow people to make a case for why they shouldn't have been kicked off, and be able to have a real reason. I think, you know, if you're going to get kicked off of Twitch, the best thing you want is to know exactly why you got kicked off Twitch, and you can either make a change or you can take a stand and say, no, I'm not going to follow these standards. I'm going to go somewhere else. And I think that's, you know, this nebulous area of, you know, what did I do wrong, or what didn't I do wrong, or what how could I have done better? It just needs to be laid out so people are crystal clear and understand it all. And so that's been my frustration, not only with Twitch but with a lot of the others. It just seems like YouTube is a little more open, or I don't know. You guys could probably speak to the whole streaming network, but that's been my frustration, watching people that I liked watching get kicked off and banned.
Yeah, and I want to talk to Tom a little bit about this because, you know, YouTube is pretty much forget Kick for a second. I feel like YouTube is pretty much Twitch's main competition at this point. And YouTube started integrating streaming stuff in response to how popular Twitch was initially. And it feels like YouTube, at least on the technical end of things, and also on the moderation and brand safety end of things, seems to be far superior to Twitch, which is why it keeps eating into its market share. And I know that there are streamers on Twitch who like experimented going like full YouTube and to just kind of compare and see like, if they could make more money or get more views or more popularity on YouTube versus Twitch. And it seems like, people like Moist Critical and stuff like that tried going like all in on YouTube, found that Twitch is actually, for what they do, far more effective, even though YouTube offers like, more discoverability and all this other stuff. So in your opinion, like, why is it that Twitch can't effectively compete with YouTube? What is YouTube doing so right that just keeps eating into Twitch's market share, especially when it comes to gaming?
Can I pass? No, I mean, honestly, just
live stream on YouTube. So like, I want to get
YouTube is the easier accessible thing. I mean, more people have it. It's available in more places as far as like on apps, on phones and stuff like that. I have never been a Twitch user. I've never been a gamer, so it didn't appeal to me. I think we tried setting up a Twitch thing and it was just so complicated. And like you said, they'd eat so much of the revenue. It's kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Rumble is the only thing right now that I think is possibly going to have a chance to compete with YouTube. And that's only just because you can still have a market where 2 or 3 exist. And as long as somebody's doing something the other guy isn't, that's what matters. And I think at the end of the day, Twitch is too much like YouTube and too constrictive in other ways. Like, I mean, you kind of laid it all out already. Like, the problem is we have enough problems with YouTube already. Add in all the stuff that Twitch's problems are on top of that all. I mean, and then I remember the only thing I can think about with Twitch is like last time I remember talking about them is when they had that controversial live show thing where somebody broke their ass. It was because
that was TwitchCon, and that was porn star Adriana Chechnik.
That's the last time I remember talking about Twitch, to be honest with you. So like, it's so not even in my conversation. But with YouTube, it's kind of more like a dance with the one you brought. We may not know everything, we may not see eye to eye on everything, but at least with YouTube, it feels like there's a little bit more of a rapport there, to where Twitch just never even.
Well, Tom,
it felt disconnected from the start.
One of the big advantages YouTube has over every other social media platform is its discoverability engine, because YouTube knows how to recommend stuff to an individual user that person wants to watch. And with Twitch,
it's the kitty videos, but yeah.
With Twitch, like to Brian's point, the way that I started using Twitch was I would go on there because I was interested in a game and I wanted to watch a tournament, like for instance, Hearthstone. And the people who were in that tournament had individual Twitch channels, and I would go and check out their channels, and I would subscribe to them. And that's how I became fans of like all these different like Twitch streamers. It was all through like, discovering this tournament, and then filtering down into the people who were involved in that tournament, and then filtering down to the people that those people collaborated with, and so on and so forth. The biggest issue with Twitch from the beginning has always been discoverability. Like for whatever reason, they just don't know how to help small creators gain traction. It's gotten to the point where people basically have to stream 12 hours a day, every day, in the hopes of building an audience over the course of years. And it's very time consuming and soul sucking, to do all that work and get very little in return. When with YouTube, you have a much greater opportunity to get discovered by an audience and build a fan base and build a brand. So in your opinion, Tom, why is it that Twitch just can't seem to understand that discoverability is the number one thing that creators want?
Well, I mean, Amazon has always had a problem with being second fiddle to Netflix in that respect. So I don't know, maybe it's something in their marketing department. Maybe it's somebody over there who just doesn't quite understand how to connect these things. Because, I mean, I don't know much about Twitch, and just listening to you guys here, that's what it seems to be the bigger problem is that they don't seem to understand that there's a synergy there that could be had. And I mean, even if it's something as simple as I'm watching a Twitch tournament and they're playing, a Call of Duty game, and all of a sudden a little thing pops up and I can actually buy that Call of Duty game as I'm watching it. That's something that YouTube has been trying to do. So they're already getting ahead of the game with that kind of stuff. And I guess I don't know if Amazon has anything like that. I mean, again, it just doesn't feel like they're innovative in any way, and I wish I had better answers for it, but we are so like just keyed into YouTube right now that Twitch and a lot of these other things are just so off of our map, and I'm not a gamer, so I honestly couldn't tell you the last time I turned Twitch on or even went to the Twitch website or whatever. So yeah.
All right. Well, Odin, one of the big issues here, at least, is basically brand safety, because YouTube and Twitch, and to a certain extent Kick, they make their money off of advertising, right? So advertisers go to them, they pay money to have their ads shown, and if the ads convert, the advertiser's happy. If the ads don't convert, advertisers leave. And most of the advertising on Twitch that's effective are brand deals with the individual creators. You have G Fuel that goes out, makes a deal with like a big streamer. They drink G Fuel on stream. They pitch G Fuel to their fans. They go and buy G Fuel. The whole culture of Twitch, where it's basically a live streaming platform, I have the opportunity to basically have commercials played during our live stream. I never use it because people don't show up to live streams, especially video game live streams, where you could be in the middle of a very like feverish match, and all of a sudden a commercial plays and you miss like some of the best gaming that like you could have possibly done. And so I'm always kind of like fascinated by like why Twitch just doesn't do ad overlays as opposed to like video ads. Like, why do you have to break for commercial when, if you guys remember when network TV was a thing, you'd watch stuff and they'd have like a lower thirds pop up where it's like, this show is coming up next at like this time. It just lasts a couple seconds. It was unobtrusive, but like if you were watching something, you'd notice it and it would register with you. But the big thing to me is that brand safety has always been a Trojan horse to censorship. And Twitch, to its credit, has always been like a platform that, people could go on and basically express themselves, whether it's through gaming, whether it's through IRL, whether it's through like whatever the case may be. But we see this with YouTube, and we're going to get into this even deeper in the next section. But this idea that advertisers can bully a platform into taking off like entire sections or banning specific creators because they're saying something controversial or something outside the norm. What do you think are the dangers in that, and how should these platforms be treating this brand safety argument?
Yeah, it's a tough one because you really have to kind of balance kind of what Alan was saying before about like that aspect of censorship. And do you allow simply for complete unfettered free speech and then just allow the chips to fall where they may? Do you potentially have these rules in there, but at least make them a bit more transparent? And I think that it is definitely the difficult choice that these companies have to make, especially ones like Twitch. I think the issue ultimately with Twitch is that it almost seems like a company that, at least at this point, since maybe it's only since Amazon took over, trying to find its identity, trying to find where it fits in the space, recognizing that it is competition to YouTube, but also not offering the same content or the same platform in any way, right? Because Twitch is known for its live streaming. It's not really known for being given access to or typically used for a lot of VOD, a lot of random videos of like cats and dogs and all the cute videos that people like watching, in addition to gaming highlights and things of that nature. And so I think that really it's less so about necessarily brand safety concerns for them, and more about just their own identity issues in general. And I just, based off of where they've been going with it and the decisions they've been making, I don't think that they're going to really fix that anytime soon. And I think, when it comes to this space, YouTube is clearly ahead of the game. Even competitors like Rumble that have been coming around like have a lot of problems, especially with discoverability, because YouTube is just so good when it comes to that. Obviously, we can be critical of their algorithm for a lot of reasons, but I think that we would all have to admit that in general, discoverability is not terrible. The content we tend to get recommended seems to make sense and at least match up to the things that we've been watching. The chances of me finding something that I actually want to watch next is a lot higher on this platform than it would be necessarily on some of those other ones. But I honestly think it's a more of an identity problem for Twitch than anything else.
Yeah, and I feel like Twitch, the one thing YouTube does really well is it caters to not only the creators on the platform, like it helps the creators, it listens to the creators, it wants the creators to succeed, right? For the most part, there are exceptions, but it also prioritizes the user. And so, like, the YouTube algorithm is all about trying to figure out what a specific individual user enjoys, tailor their watch experience to that, and then match up the right users with the right creators to create fan bases, to create loyal viewership, all this other stuff. And I feel like Twitch is very anti-creator in a lot of ways. Like they make it very hard for people to build an audience on Twitch, but then they also make it really hard to make money off of the platform. And I feel like if Twitch were to kind of figure out, okay, what can we do to help creators? What can we do to help users? And then then the advertising stuff would just fall into place, kind of like how it works with YouTube. But before we get into our next story, which has a lot to do with that, I want to give a big shout out to Astro Nerd Boy, who's been a longtime fan of the channel and one of our Salty Saturday superstars. He donated $10. Back when I had time to stream on Twitch and YouTube, often YouTube would have the larger audience. I don't even go to Twitch anymore, and I still support Mobile Gamer there. Yes, my good friend Trevor, Mobile Gamer. Hoping to get him on the live stream one day. He's notoriously anti showing up on other people's live streams, but he's a great guy. And he's probably one of the few people I actually still watch over on Twitch because he does Twitch streaming. But YouTube is where the eyeballs are, guys. And that's why we're all here. Like, if we could all just go over to Rumble and not have to worry about half the BS that YouTube throws our way, we'd probably do it. At least I know I would. But it's one of those catch-22 situations where basically YouTube is the only game in town that not only has the audience, but also pays the creators enough to make it worth, them building a business here or sticking around. But speaking of that, guys, it's time to get into our top story of the day, which is the new media versus the mainstream media. And this is something that I want to talk about, not just because the election's right around the corner, but because I've noticed very specifically how new media has been playing a role in this election cycle that it never played in any other election cycle in the past. And it really kind of started with me with this New York Times hit piece story, where basically the New York Times decided to cherry pick some right-wing YouTube content creators. I say right-wing, Tim Pool's not really right-wing, and some of these guys aren't like super right-wing either. But because they're kind of counter narrative, they're like, calling the Democrats out on all their BS. They're lumped into right-wing. And basically the New York Times did this hit piece where you can see the title down here, Election Falsehoods Take Off on YouTube, and It Looks the Other Way. And what this was basically a hit piece that was coordinated with this liberal anti-free speech organization called Media Matters, where they basically just used crib notes from Media Matters to say, like, all these people are dangerous right-wing extremists who are spreading misinformation and disinformation. And this was basically a way to pressure YouTube to take these creators down, running up in the final days of the election, right? And to their credit, YouTube kind of stood up and said, hey, none of these guys are violating our policies. We're not going to do this. But this is the type of thing that the New York Times in particular has been doing for a while. Like, this is how the first and second adpocalypse happened, if you guys remember that, right? I think in the second adpocalypse, Steven Crowder had like some type of like disagreement with a LGBTQ influencer, and the New York Times pointed this out and pressured YouTube to take action, and it basically fucked everyone.
He
right?
called him a gay Mexican. And
yeah, and they were.
But he was a gay Mexican.
yeah. There were no lies detected in that.
No lies detected. He's literally a gay Mexican.
Yeah, literally. But what was funny about this is that in the new media period here, okay, and this is a Fox News thing, where they basically kind of talk about the far left Media Matters thing, but Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson on X both kind of tweeted about this before the article came out. And this is great. So like in Tucker's thing, the New York Times guy who's writing this article, he contacts him asking for a quote. And Tucker says, so the New York Times is working with a left-wing hate group to silence critics of the Democratic Party. Please ask yourself why you're participating in it. This is why you got into journalism? It's shameful. I hope you're filled with guilt and self-loathing for sending me a text like this. Please quote me. And then the New York Times reporter responds, thank you for the prompt response. Would you like to address any of the points or questions above? And he had like listed all the stuff that, he was going to be addressing in the article. And Tucker says, would I like to participate in your attempt to censor me? No, thanks. But I do hope that you'll quote what I wrote above and also note that I told you to fuck off, which I am now doing. Thanks. Which is the pitch perfect response to this type of thing. But Ben Shapiro also did like a big thread on this on X, because he got contacted by the New York Times as well. But he went kind of like a little bit more in depth about like, why this is dishonest and what the actual motivation behind this was. And what was really interesting to me is that, so basically new media, which is like YouTubers, podcasters, people who are outside of the network media, the people who are on the broadcast airwaves and stuff like that, they've had such a huge impact on this election cycle. In fact, this is a direct strategy from Barron Trump, of all people, because Barron Trump is a young guy. He's very tuned into YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that. No, but almost Batman. Almost Batman.
Almost Batman. Right.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about this election cycle is, so Donald Trump was never able to get an honest shake in the mainstream media. Like they would always try to, deceptively edit his interviews. They would take him out of context. They would flat out argue with him, like Leslie Stahl on that famous 60 Minutes interview about the Hunter Biden laptop, where she's like, it's been disproven. And he's like, no, it hasn't. And they edited it to make it look like Trump was completely out of touch and didn't know what he was talking about. And with new media, what's really interesting here is that Donald Trump has embraced it this news cycle. And with new media, they play these interviews oftentimes unedited. People get to see Trump's full response. And the crowds that watch these different podcasts and YouTube channels and live streams and stuff like that aren't the types of people who normally watch news. Like they're kind of low information voters. They don't really care about politics or whatever. They want to be entertained. And so when they see Trump on these new media platforms, oftentimes it goes counter to the narrative that they've been fed by the mainstream media. And this time around, we've seen so many things where basically Kamala and Biden have had numerous lies exposed by, free speech on X, YouTube, all this other stuff. But the big thing to me is typically we talk about endorsements and how important endorsements can be. And on the Democrat side, you have, the Avengers just came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. Remember, Down with Democracy?
Down with democracy.
Hashtag Down with Democracy. But if you look at the people who've endorsed Trump compared to all the Hollywood elites that have endorsed Kamala, so here's a list, right? So we have Jake Paul, Conor McGregor, Buzz Aldrin, Drea DiMatteo from The Sopranos, Zachary Levi, Shazam himself, Tony Hinchcliffe, famous stand-up comedian, Kill Tony, adult actresses Rochelle Ryan and Amber Rose, Mel Gibson, Paula Deen, the Queen of Butter, Brett Favre, Elon Musk, Victoria Jackson, Kelsey Grammer, Jim Caviezel.
Favre,
Did you just say Brett Favre?
Favre,
Yeah, he did.
whatever.
Jesus Christ.
Is it Favreau?
I'm the destroyer of words, guys. I get
That
it.
hurts my heart that you just said Favre. They
Tell me
just
about it. I'm from Wisconsin.
Dennis Quaid, Jason Aldean, Dana White. The list goes on and on and on.
It's Dana
right?
Witte, actually. Dana
Witte?
Witte. Yeah.
Aswipe. Okay. But also I want to give a big shout out, John Voight, Scott Baio, Dean Cain, all these guys, Hulk Hogan, 50 Cent himself has come out in favor of Trump. And it's really
He was
interesting.
I don't want to be 25 cent.
Well, can I draw just a very quick dividing line between those folks and others? They didn't go to any of Diddy's freakouts.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah,
But,
50 Cent hated Diddy.
But I want to talk a little bit about the new media that Trump has been targeting. And again, Almost Batman was the mastermind behind this marketing strategy, right? Because Barron Trump famously, he watches podcasts, he watches YouTube, and he'd go to his dad and he'd be like, "Dad, these are the guys you need to get on the shows with. So we have most famously the Joe Rogan podcast, right? Both Trump and JD Vance have been on Joe Rogan, but the as Elon Musk likes to say, or I should say Jordan Peterson, the X-Men, the excellent men of like Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Vivek, and Elon himself have all been on the Joe Rogan podcast. Tens of millions of views, right? I think that the Trump thing now is like upwards of like 35, 40 million views, which is absolutely insane. Like it puts to shame any other news program that he could have possibly gone on. The Undertaker from the WWE, right? Like he was on the 6 Feet Under podcast with Kane, right? Both the Undertaker and Kane very publicly supported Donald Trump. That reaches a lot of young male WWE fans. Andrew Schultz, comic. He's like a co-host with Charlemagne the God on a different podcast. Not the type of guy you'd think would endorse Trump. He had Trump on a show. Trump won those guys over. Andrew Schultz endorsed Trump. You have Bussin' with the Boys, which is a Barstool Sports podcast. Theo Vaughn. You had Theo Vaughn, who's like the 5th biggest podcast in America right now. Like he just talked to Trump about drug addiction and stuff like that. It didn't even touch on politics.
Right.
It was really
great.
interesting. Then you had Aiden Ross, who's like the biggest streamer on Kick. We just talked about Twitch. Aiden Ross is over on Kick. He's one of the biggest streamers over there. Like millions and millions of people watch this guy. Lex Friedman, who's the closest thing to like a nonpartisan, fact-based journalist out there. Like he just sits there, he gives the most boring freaking interviews, but he has interesting people on his show. Like he had Trump on there. The Nelk brothers, Dr. Phil, Dave Ramsey, Logan Paul did an entire episode of Impulsive at Mar-a-Lago with Trump. The All In podcast, who are a bunch of tech bros. Sean Ryan, Patrick Bet David, PBD. It was actually like one of the few like really good interviews that PBD's ever done, in my opinion. You have Dan Bongino, you have Tyrus. Tim Dillon had JD Vance on. That was a fantastic interview.
That was good.
JD Vance just like freaking killed it on that show. You have Tucker Carlson. You have the Elon Musk Spaces that Trump did. And, famously, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, tried to launch his presidential campaign on Twitter Spaces. It's a good idea that the technical wise, it didn't quite work out for him. But, Trump learned from that, and he did like the biggest Twitter space ever with Elon very early on in the campaign season. Then you have like Jim Norton, who did UFC Unfiltered. Tim Pool had Trump on his show, right? And of course, Ben Shapiro also had him on his show. So like you have all these situations where not only Trump, but Trump surrogates like RFK Jr. and JD Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and all these guys go on these new media shows that reach a very particular audience, people who aren't typically political, right? Or who are low information or who don't know anything about politics. And you're seeing like more Latinos, more Black people, more youth vote, more independents, more libertarians, all shifting towards Trump because of this utilization of new media. And the mainstream media is out there like losing their fucking minds because they don't know how to compete. They can't control that narrative that new media is basically breaking through. And through the new media, all their lies and deceptions are getting exposed as well. And X is a big part of that. And this New York Times hit piece, which coordinated with the Washington Post to drop another hit piece just days later, trying to pressure YouTube to take down these very influential channels. They're scrambling to try to retain control. And I think going forward, if Trump wins this election, which I think he will, this is going to be the template that oftentimes politicians are probably going to follow. I mean, right now, Ted Cruz has his own podcast. A lot of politicians are starting their own podcast just to get their message out unfiltered in a way that the mainstream media can't, spin or control or whatever. So I wanted to have a conversation with my expert panel of nerds about new media and the advantages it has over the mainstream media and how the mainstream media is actually probably going to die or at least see a big decline in usage as Gen Z and Gen Alpha and all these younger generations get older and they're getting their news and stuff from new media as opposed to CBS News or ABC News or whatever. So Alan, you are in the heart of Los Angeles. You're in the entertainment industry. You deal with these people. You see this. You are a legit journalist. You work for Film Threat, which is a legit magazine, has been for a long time. So you're right in this kind of like new media versus mainstream media kind of like bubble, I would say. What's your take on this, and how do you think the mainstream media is going to try to destroy new media as a way to compete?
Yeah, I mean, the way mainstream media is going to destroy new media is to claim that they're the only true journalists, that that freedom of press only applies to the mainstream media and not to the new media streamers. That's how they're going to go after it. I mean, I'll say that, growing up my entire life, the news has always had a liberal bias to it. But to me, it was always at a bearable point where at least they made attempts to feel balanced, attempts to understand the other position and challenge it. But today, it just feels like the attacks are unbearable and the gaslighting is just insanely unbearable. And that's why I turned to new media, because I just can't watch mainstream anymore. It just feels like I'm not getting the full story. It feels like that they're propaganda for one of the parties. And what I like about new media is the fact that, to have Trump sit down and have a conversation. JD Vance, I just watched the JD Vance Joe Rogan interview, and I was incredibly impressed with the guy. The way he spoke, the way the thoughtfulness. This is what you get, because on mainstream media, you're just going to get the selected clips and bits that they want to get out there. And it's, like I said, generally biased. But to watch a full interview, to see each person, look, Kamala has been doing podcasts and streams. And every time she does it, I get to know the full person who Kamala is, to the point to for this person. You see her in all her glory when she does these things, and you see Trump as well, and it just makes, I just hope that this new media grows more and more, and quite frankly, that is why the mainstream media is afraid of them, because they are getting the audiences that they once had, and that they don't have the monopoly anymore. And again, I think I think the next fight for the mainstream media is to say that the First Amendment, freedom of press, only applies to them and nobody else.
But Alan, we've already seen, so it's not just in politics though, like the whole new media versus mainstream media debate. We see it in our industry too, like the entertainment industry, where it's like you guys at Film Threat, Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, Critical Drinker, all these guys are the new media. And every time Variety writes a piece defending the idiocy of Lucasfilm, every time Screen Rant, comes out in favor of Disney and calls its viewers racist and sexist and misogynist and stuff like that. That is the frontline battle right there, where it's like, we have our YouTube, bubble here. Like, we're all friends. We all communicate. We all show up on each other's streams and stuff like that. But we speak the truth, right? We speak our opinion, or at least
Right.
like we truthfully say what we think about something.
What we believe, right?
Yeah. And compare that to all the shilling and obvious fake narratives that, the mainstream press in entertainment push out there. Like this isn't just a political thing. This happens in like video game journalism, right? All these things basically come down to new media is more honest and more truthful than the established media. And what do you think are the consequences of this, where it just seems to me like the mainstream establishment media's days are numbered, but maybe I'm just looking at it from a biased perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's been numbered for a long time. Fox News still outperforms the entire mainstream media combined. It's I feel like that the mainstream media exists solely that people can talk about and rant about. And it's weird because I think it doesn't, like, Hollywood Reporter and Variety and all those guys they're owned by the same company.
It's all Penske. Yeah.
Yeah,
The only
right.
one it's not is the Wrap.
Yeah, and the point there is that all they're doing is quoting each other. I see it all the time where the Hollywood Reporter will say, "Well, Variety just broke this news," and it's the same company, and they'll do it vice versa. It's this sinister way of controlling what goes out to the masses, and right now I think more and more people you see are applying their critical thinking skills and listening to these guys and asking real questions. Right now, not enough of people are doing it. These low information voters, that they want to keep them low information voters, and they will do everything they can to silence the other side. Otherwise, if they hear us and they hear us talk honestly about our opinions, whether we agree or disagree with one another, the biggest threat to the mainstream media is for people to start thinking for themselves.
Yeah.
And culture, before we went live, you and I were having a conversation about, because, you are in one of the most contested counties in America, Maricopa County, where all types of weird shenanigans go on in that swing state.
Yeah.
Whenever election season comes up.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that we talked about was how many Trump signs that you're seeing out right now compared to like 2020 or even 2016, right? Where it was almost like it was almost dangerous to publicly have like a support for Trump out there. And what's been interesting to me is as Trump has done more and more of these long form interview podcasts that aren't edited, that are published, like I mean, with JD Vance's Joe Rogan interview, like you literally saw like the technical, they didn't even edit out the technical difficulties they had where Joe Rogan's mic kept dropping out, right? So like truly unedited stuff that's getting out there. And I think as Trump did more and more of these things leading up to, the final stretch of the election, because people were able to see him unfiltered, unedited, without all the spin and stuff like that, all the attacks that Kamala tried to levy against him, he's Hitler, he's literally Hitler, he's a Nazi, like all this other stuff, fell flat because people are like, that's not the dude I saw on Flagrant or Joe Rogan or Impulsive or like whatever. So what do you think is the effect that Trump's new media strategy has had on this election?
Actually, I think you can see it. You actually pointed out something quite tangible. Yard signs. Yard signs are going up. And as those appearances, I don't know if this correlates, probably not, but I've seen more and more signs in my area going up supporting Trump in an area where, most of the people just kind of gave up on, announcing who they were voting for. We still have a few people that are looking towards a more, controlled future. But in my area, it's wide with Trump signs. It's amazing to me. People are unabashedly unafraid at this point, and that's amazing. As far as the new media goes, though, the new media is destroying the old media, and I think that's basically largely to blame. And I think if Barron Trump was the strategist, as we should say, sorry, I use that from an old Rush Limbaugh days.
I love it.
Yeah, but
that was an old SNL joke too. With
George Bush.
That was Anchorman.
But
it's SNL. You're right.
Strategery and all the other things he used to say were brilliant. So, but anyway, back to it. I think that's actually bearing out. People don't consume news or information the same way the old media wants you to anymore. And the fact that it's more easy to reach people in a way. I mean, I can listen to Mr. Kadish, all day long on my on my phone or wherever I happen to be in the house, just by tuning into one of these shows. And the fact that Trump went out there, took full advantage of this in a way nobody else had. And again, as always, Kamala had to come along and then copy. But it's been extraordinary. And I think it's easier to explain and to point to people the unfiltered, the uncollated, the uncurated information that normally gets out to people in the news media. To actually see what he says, just full, raw, no garbage, as you were mentioning. And
unfiltered.
Unfiltered. And I think that's really going to be the difference here for a lot of people. And I don't think we can ever go back. I think this is the beginning of the new election cycle. And I think going forward, probably for the rest of my life, these people are going to come and have real conversations with people. And they're not going to get questions they expect, which is something I love, right? I'm not going to pre-prep you, a specific candidate, with all the things I'm going to ask you. That's not the point here. I'm going to ask you all of the cool stuff, like what was it like to be the first day, to be a first day president? What, you never were in politics before. How did this feel? Those kinds of questions. Not a lot of other people are going to get out there and ask that question. Theo Vaughn's going to ask his different questions. That knucklehead that's going to fight Tyson. He went out and
Jake Paul.
pontificated elsewhere. Yeah. I mean, you've got, and I assure you that as people become familiar with the fact that this is going to bring eyeballs, when you're able to have these bulletproof conversations with these politicians, this will change everything if it hasn't already. And I'm going to say one last thing, because you didn't allow me to do this, but I have to. Musk is going to take care of Media Matters, dude. That's April 2025, baby. Then we don't have to worry about them anymore.
Yeah, Odin, I want to throw this to you because out of everyone on the panel, you're probably the one who is most regularly in contact with America's youth, like the young people. And the young people out there, I can remember when I was in like grade school, I didn't care about politics. When I was in high school, I kind of knew what my parents thought about politics, but I didn't really pay attention. It wasn't until I got into college where I really started kind of paying attention to that type of thing. But Democrats have traditionally done very well with like the youth vote because kids are stupid, right? But one of the interesting things about like the whole new media campaign that Trump went on is you have people who speak directly to a young audience. Like, Culture just called him a knucklehead, but Jake Paul, he has a huge following of young people. His brother Logan Paul, he has a big following of young people. Aiden Ross, it's like all young people.
Yeah.
All streamers, it's all gamers, it's all these young men who probably don't normally bother themselves with politics, and yet when these big influencers start talking about it and start showing them interviews with like the president or like whatever, these kids, like, they get exposed to that type of thing and then they start to form opinions on it. So I wanted to get your take on how do you think the new media campaign for this election has affected America's youth? Do you think it's actually permeated into that crowd of kids that maybe like aren't political, but like they're like, like I don't know much about Trump, but I like him now because I saw him interviewed on Impulsive or something like that?
To a degree, right? Because there's different levels of youth and youth engagement. There's some that do watch like the podcast, so get into Joe Rogan, watch those episodes, really enjoy those conversations that are had. But there's also a lot, especially if they're a little bit younger, like in the maybe 13 to 16 age demographic, where they're much more into like the short form content. So the way it's impacted them, it's obviously kids of non-voting age, but the way that it's impacted them is much more about memes and meme culture. I remember it was earlier in the year, and all of a sudden, randomly, two guys in one of the classes I was teaching just started going back and forth, being like, "It's gonna be huge, it's gonna be big." Like they started doing Trump impressions, and so it was like clearly they, like it didn't come across as their family is a part of this political party, and so now they're just reiterating it. It's like, no, clearly they've saw some videos and they just think they're hilarious, probably like comics that do different impersonations, including one of Trump. So I think that the meme culture has had a huge impact, and so I don't know how much impact it has on the youth now as far as that specific demographic, because that'll probably impact them in the next cycle. Though the other question is, of course, what happens after Trump is no longer a part of the political discourse and discussion, because no one, it seems, can really drive people the same way. But that's where the brilliance in choosing someone like a JD Vance is because what he's doing is choosing someone who actually is closer to that age, to the younger, generations, who can actually do well on a Joe Rogan, who can understand that space quite a bit, and therefore will be able to be probably best suited to maybe dive further into it. And, going back to what I think it was, I think it may have been what Culture was saying, but something I'm really looking forward to is I cannot wait for the presidential politics to move away from that corporate structure as we've kind of seen it doing. Like having those interviews where it's long form, not that formal CNN, NBC type interview where it's clearly edited down and you really can't trust what you're seeing. Instead, you have just people who are authentic, people that you trust in some degree. Again, whether you should trust them or not is obviously up to the mind. But just having that, much more likely to get good information from them, much more likely for them to make a big mistake. And it actually is like, oh, now you have to actually figure out on your feet how you're going to pick up from this mistake and explain yourself. I think is going to be a huge net benefit to our political discourse, because we have relied way too long. It's basically how 2020 happened, where someone could literally from their basement do nothing and still get elected because of the power of the mainstream system. And, now we're seeing that being broken down quite a bit. And so I love seeing it happen.
Yeah, and I'll get to you in a second, Culture. But one of those interesting things about this, after people see like a 3-hour Trump interview or like whatever, is a lot of people have been bringing up the idea of more Lincoln Douglas style debates, where basically you have a live stream where you have the two candidates sit down, and instead of having moderators there, instead of having time limits, you just like videotape them having a discussion where they're actually just debating each other. And in a way that can be way more honest and informative than these bullshit, like ABC, CBS debates where you have the moderators literally like, playing favorites. You have fact checks that are actually like lies. And you have people like, trying to communicate what it is they believe and think is important within the confines of like 60-second sound bites, right? Like I feel like new media is the perfect kind of platform for something like that. What were you going to say, Culture?
Oh, wow. Nothing now. You jumped all over a great idea. I'd rather explore that, because I think you're right. A Lincoln Douglas style debate, the fact that both people have to speak extemporaneously from a background that they brought into the conversation with, and to have somebody be able to fact check them. That's fascinating. Why don't you do that? You do that. You do that, man.
Well, I want to ask Tom, because Tom, one of the interesting things about this new media strategy is that it's not just Trump, because a lot of people already have kind of like their thoughts about Trump. They either like him or hate him. So like if they hate him, they're probably not going to watch these things. If they don't know anything about him, they might choose to watch it or not. But the big thing is that his surrogates have been all over new media, like Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, JD Vance, Elon Musk. All these guys are going and doing the same strategy, but they're reaching more people. Like just RFK Jr. alone has been able to bring in so many libertarians and independents into Trump's camp that it could be the deciding factor in the election. And so it's not just about the presidential candidates doing new media and shirking the mainstream media. It's also about their surrogates. So like, what do you think about that strategy?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, Trump, look, I'm kind of one of these people that kind of made their mind up this time around. I did not vote in the last election, admittedly, because I just at that point wasn't sure that either candidate, in my opinion, was worth a crap. But after the last 4 years, I've seen the difference. And a lot of the things that you're talking about kind of helped me make that decision. Seeing other people talk about Trump, learning how to speak Trump really helps. Learning how to use X and other places to find my news, because you can't trust the media. And like I was saying at the beginning of the show, like after this week, if you're any person who has any brain cells and you can't start to see the way the media is spinning this stuff to the point where like Trump literally has a case against like CNN and MSNBC right now where he could sue the shit out of them. The way that they spun this whole thing with what's her face, the war hawk, I just forgot her name.
Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney. Yeah, with that whole thing, just that alone, just that one thing, okay? The way that they spun that, from my understanding of going to school for this stuff, that is one of the, I don't even know how somebody didn't stop them. Because the way they were spinning that was like, are you serious right now? Like, are you seriously trying to say that he said that, when even anybody who can listen to the actual quote, unless you literally chop off the beginning of it and really try to present it in that way to somebody, no sane person is going to think that, right? Like, even when you got Bill Maher coming out and saying, yeah, no, he didn't really mean that, you guys, that was really kind of stupid. It's like, no, it's not just stupid. This is the kind of crap that got him shot at. Right, and this is what kind of turned me at the end. I'm like, you know what? It was one thing when they just haven't been friendly towards him because they have a bias, but when they are clearly just flat out lying, making shit up, misrepresenting, to the point where this is election interference, in my opinion. Like, we have gotten so far past the point I've ever seen anything in my lifetime that if, you know what, all those things that they're scared about Trump doing in office, he should do half of them just to show them how stupid they're being and the laws they're breaking, because they keep trying to come at him with every little thing they can. And it's like, do you realize the laws that have been broken in the last few years here are just insane? And yet they just let him do it. Just let it go on. You know, it's like, okay, you know what? I was serious earlier when I said, yeah, I hope to gosh, when if Trump gets into office, knock on wood, that basically he just comes in and pulls a Elon and just fires everybody he can. Like literally across the board.
Yeah.
Because at this point, that's the only way you're going to drain the swamp.
Just clear it
It's a
out.
literally, what do you do here situation scenario then? Because at that point, then you rehire back the people who actually did do work, right? Like that's what Elon did. But as far as like the reach to you got to reach the kids, right? My kid, he's been somebody who's always been on the side of Trump. And, you know, he's somebody who follows a lot of different things to where I think kids are smart enough, right? We've had X now that's been free now basically for, you know, however long now since Elon bought it. And I think that's the big difference coming into this election. And I think a lot of people have noticed how big of a difference it was compared to last few times where, you know, we were bombarded with stuff on Facebook and X and other, you know, outlets like that, to where these kids, you know, like they've pretty much abandoned Facebook. You know, Facebook is the new MySpace because it's what your grandma uses according to them, right? So
Right,
like,
yeah.
if it's not something that's on Instagram, X, or TikTok, or whatever it is that they're using that I have no idea what it is.
Tick face.
Yeah, the tick face thing or whatever, you know, Ticktogram as I call it. No, like I think it's a good thing, and kids will listen more. And I think it's a bigger deal because I think the biggest chasm between Trump and people right now, and those who just don't want to listen to him because they just have that thing about it, is if you could just listen, because like you guys said, if you sit there and listen to him in long form, he makes sense. Now, is he the best at expressing his ideas? No. But once you start to listen to what he's saying and how he breaks it down and how he thinks, like that Joe Rogan interview, I had already made my decision and cast my vote by that point. But if I hadn't, that would have definitely been the clincher, because at that point, I'm like, I can see now why this guy is good at making deals and talking to people, and why all these people from The View and stuff actually liked him originally, and it just shows you the disingenuousness of all the people who are turning on him now, who loved him and kissed his ass before, right?
Right.
You know, we're looking at you, Whoopi Goldberg, and all these other people that are trying to pretend that it never happened, right? Well, it's because he is a very personable person. You could tell on the Joe Rogan interview, they sat there for 3 hours. Do you realize they really only talked about Trump, if you're lucky, for about 45 minutes to an hour? Most of it was him just turning it back on Joe. So I'm sure that's what he does in any given situation with somebody, and that's how he gets to know people, plus makes them feel more comfortable so he can go in and make the deal then, right? Because he's looking at being a president is just that. I got to go to all these different places and make deals with all these people and not get screwed. And when he looks at not getting screwed, he's looking at America not getting screwed, not just him personally, because he has no personal stake in this outside of being an American. And if you can't think of it in that simplistic of terms, then I guess I don't know what else to tell you at this point. But Kamala, I mean, look, I think the youth is smart. They can see how discombobulated she is, how disconnected she is. And just because you can create a bunch of celebrities who, let's be real, don't know how to make life choices anyway, coming out for her. I mean, somebody did a mic drop. I can't remember the guy. I wish I could give him credit, but I shared it on my Twitter. And it's the last I'll say about it. He did the ultimate mic drop when he's like, you got Beyonce out there parading her around and you know, and all these people, and J-Lo. Well, J-Lo, you know, she's saying that Trump is supposed to be this like thing against, you know, we're supposed to worry about him and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, you didn't seem to warn us about Diddy though.
Nope.
Right? You knew about him for years.
Nope.
And I know I fucked up how it was said, but he did an ultimate mic drop on
She doesn't
that
make
shit.
great decisions, right?
Well, it wasn't even about the decisions. It's like, so you're coming out and we're supposed to believe you that Trump is this horrible person and the warnings you're giving us about Trump, but you didn't bother to come out and warn us about Diddy?
Right.
I mean, it's those kind of things that you got to remember with some of these people. All these people are in the same camps. They hide all the same things. Trump knows a lot of these people. So that's what they're scared of too, right? Like that's the other thing. There's a disconnection between them and certain politicians. But Trump, these people used to chum up with him. Don't think he doesn't know who the worst of these people are.
Oh, he does. That's why he also threatened, and this is something that you're not going to get the same promise from Kamala of releasing the the Jeffrey info.
Epstein
Well, and
list,
I think
yeah.
the
Yeah,
Diddler
Epstein
list would be a
logs.
similar thing because that's
Well,
where a lot of people I don't think are off on that either.
I want to get the future Tim Pool Brian's take on this because him and his brother Shane are going to be dominating the news space very quickly.
Oh,
I don't know
but
about that.
but Brian, you know, one of the biggest issues with the mainstream media is credibility. Like they have just blatantly been lying for like almost 8 years about
Right.
Trump, right? And they don't seem to be catching on to the fact that people are starting to notice, and people are turning to alternatives because they don't trust the news that they're being given. Like you have a situation where like Trump was almost shot, bullets were flying, like pictures caught bullets whizzing by his head, right?
Right.
And like if that had been like a Democrat, we'd still be hearing about it in the news cycle. They
We still
buried
talk
that
about
story.
JFK. Yeah.
Yeah, they buried that story within like a week,
Yep.
right? And then when the second assassination attempt happened, they were like, "Oh, nothing to see here." They take every little thing that he says completely out of context. The Liz Cheney, or as someone in the chat said, the Warhawk Tua moment.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's nice.
and yeah. And basically, there's a credibility issue with the mainstream media where you have 60 Minutes, selectively editing. Like they literally took a answer that Kamala gave to a different question and posed it as the answer to a question that her answer was just nonsensical to.
Right.
And going even further than that, we just had the recent issue with President Biden calling every Donald Trump supporter garbage. The sitting president of the United States called half of America garbage because of who they preferred to vote for. And
Insane.
within minutes, you had the media trying to spin that with an imaginary apostrophe. And for those of you who don't know grammar, I'm sure Odin can kind of like chime in on this. When you have an apostrophe at the end of a certain term, it becomes a possessive term, where it's basically like you're not saying, "Oh, it's not plural." Like he didn't mean like garbage, like all of Americans or all of his supporters are garbage. He's saying that his supporters' position, apostrophe S, position is garbage or like whatever. And like they literally changed the White House transcript to try to push this narrative, right?
Even
so,
the
like-
stenographers, stenographers are like, no, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's highly illegal to do that, by the way, as well. But
it was a stutter that
Yeah,
you couldn't
yeah,
get that
exactly.
apostrophe in that stutter.
Exactly. So like there's a lot of examples out there of just how dishonest the media has been, and CNN has shot its credibility. You even have Anna and Schenk from the Young Turks.
Kasparian, yeah.
Yeah, who are basically like I never thought I'd say that the Young Turks are actually making sense, but like they've come out, they're just like common sense. Like these liberal policies are dangerous. These people are lying, and we're not going to play along with it. So like I got to give them a little bit of respect. They're still crazy, but like I got to give them a little bit of respect. But even they are so disenfranchised with the leftist narratives out there that they're coming around to common sense solutions. And I think a lot of that has to do with like, the middle of the ground, like, former Democrats, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, all these guys who are now in Trump's camp. So Brian, I'm going to get your take on this. How does new media keep exposing the lies and, just flat out deceptions of the mainstream media? And what impact is that going to have going forward?
Well, there's video evidence now, right? Like, where we live in an age where Twitter is actually free for once. And so that's a pretty huge platform for things to not get suppressed. Video, audio, et cetera, to not be suppressed. I think that where new media, whatever it's called, alt media, our media, this media, where we excel is, or where it excels, is able to take video evidence from 6 years ago and video evidence from now and show how the mainstream media is continually gaslighting its viewers and and the American people. A big example for me was watching Anthony Fauci say, I never said anything about 6-foot rules. I never pushed for a mask mandate. I know they're not very effective. That's what he said like 3 months ago. And then some YouTuber just went back 2 years, grabbed the video of him saying, I suggested mask mandates. I told the president we need a 6-foot rule, and literally just owned him with his own words in his own video. What makes me nuts about the mainstream media is that they act like we can't just go look it up. Like the information just disappeared. They say things like, she was never the border czar. That same exact person a year ago saying she's now been appointed the border czar. Hello? At what point do people just get over it? And they're being exposed by us, by YouTubers, by influencers, by the new media, because it's easy to do. It's an easy own to just take that person's video from CNN or The View or whatever, something they did 2 years ago, take that exact video that's been archived and it's streaming on Disney Plus or whatever it's at, take that, their own words, and just show them that they're lying. Show people. And this only works on a free internet. It only works because Elon bought Twitter. And now that Elon bought Twitter, YouTube and Facebook and other places are like, well, we gotta lighten up on this censorship thing because we're competing. Thank God he bought Twitter. Imagine if there was just this monopoly of big tech that didn't have to actually worry about freedom of speech and about showing reality. If he had not bought Twitter, I don't think YouTube would be playing the game it's playing this year. Him buying Twitter honestly made other social media networks that were actively censoring for the government, as confessed by Mark Zuckerberg recently. It made them, it put them on notice where they have to do things better because there's a competitor out there that's doing better. So I think new media, I think that the reason it's going to take over, and I think that the reason it's going to push out mainstream media is because mainstream media can't compete. They can't compete because they're owned by Big Pharma, they're owned by governments, they're owned by contracts, and all that money that is pushed out, like it's a loss leader. They're not making money, but Big Pharma props them up, and the government props them up, and these big left-wing institutions prop them up because they want to keep the influence. But you know what? That influence is waning, and people realize that the influence is waning. So now, what's Kamala doing? She's going out to influencers on TikTok and Instagram and saying $25,000 to put a reel up on your, and this is a fact, $25,000 to put a reel up. Do it for me. How many other influencers, like they're figuring out that mainstream media doesn't have the pull that new media does. I mean, come on, dude. You think The View or any of those shows that Kamala is going on is getting even a fraction of the views that Rogan got? Yet, what did Kamala say? Joe Rogan is irrelevant. He needs me. What? Are you insane?
Also, YouTube suppressing the Joe Rogan interview.
Yeah.
Like shadow banning it. And that's one of the dangers of like having a government disinformation and misinformation office. You guys remember that bullshit?
Oh, God.
Or like the Biden administration literally tried to create a government position to determine what's truth and what's disinformation, misinformation.
Creepy Poppins.
Yep. I mean, dangerous stuff. Okay.
Look, one last thing, because I want to add to what Brian said, and it's kind of important as far as I'm concerned. We need to put the original Smith-Mundt Act back in place, the unamended version, which means the U.S. government cannot lie to its own people. It cannot push propaganda in the United States against Americans. That they would be stuck in a hamstrung position because they would be violating federal law if anybody even sniffed that they were doing it, if that were in place. That all got disassembled under Obama. So you really have a huge problem there. So you get that along with the old media being replaced and unfunded by pharmaceuticals. You have a much better world to live in.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting next couple years if Trump wins. Speaking of interesting, guys, we got some super chats to get to. We got Kalikioki for $5. Wouldn't say low information. People who have rejected the mainstream media because they've been lied to for so often. The mainstream media has lost all their credibility. 100% agree. All right, guys, are you ready for like a bad Chinese accent? Because this is from Suki DN Utz for $1.99. As the only Asian here, I voted twice for Trump. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I always say. Vote early and vote often.
Your Asian
if
voice
you're
sucks.
Democrat. Yes,
Yeah.
I am not a voice actor.
And Alan sounds too white too. I mean, come on.
But I'm
Yeah,
right here.
You're not the first person.
We need Project A-Roll back on to read things.
His
You
accent.
voted for Trump twice. Good for you.
Good for you. Patriotic Gestalt for $20. He just has an ellipse there, ... But appreciate that, Patriotic Gestalt. Love you, man. The Astro Nerd Boy, a members chat. He's been a member for 19 months. That's over a year, guys. I've never been a Trump fan, but I'm voting for him. Plus, he's absolutely owning the left with iconic moments and such, which I'm down for, dude. Garbage Man, McDonald's
Same house,
Man.
brother.
Yeah, dude.
The
awesome.
garbage man was within 12 hours of that comment. He was in a garbage truck. Like
You like my
Yeah.
truck? You like my garbage truck?
Baron
The
Trump
McDonald's
was.
thing also helped.
Baron's watching
Big time.
YouTube. And he's like, "This would be hilarious, Dad.
Dude,
get in the truck."
He took a big swing today with the Peanut the squirrel. I mean, it's like,
But also him going back to Butler and being like, as I was saying, like that's his opening
Oh,
line.
that was so
Well,
gangster.
the thing is he's tapped into the social media thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that he is, unlike all these other quote unquote celebrities, and even Kamala herself. We've learned time and time again, she doesn't even have any control over her own Twitter, right? Because she tweeted like multiple times when she's in the middle of speeches or in the middle of the debate, for that
Right.
matter. And it's like, so clearly she's not even running her own Twitter. So look, he is somebody who we know has confeffed on the toilet at 3:00 in the morning.
Right?
So
Go Pepe.
On the gold toilet.
The whole internet was trying to figure
And
out what
I've
that
never
meant,
been a
and
fan
it was
of
just
Trump,
a typo.
these
Yeah.
last few months, he's really won me over. We've gotten to see more of the personal side of him. Whoever he's got behind him now compared to the last time, big improvement.
It's
Yeah.
not
I
that
noticed
bad.
that the night of the debate.
Guys,
Right, like
Westfield
with
90
Biden, but yeah.
for $4.99. Anyone remember the red tsunami? Oh yeah, it didn't happen. Sadly, until we reach rock bottom, nothing changes. The closeness of the election proves that. Well,
Yeah.
we'll
We got to
see.
make it
We'll
too
see
big
how
to
close
rig,
it
my
is.
friend. That's the other
Yeah.
thing.
yeah,
We'll see how close. And guys, big shout out to longtime supporter of the channel, WG, who's gifted 5 Salty Nerd Podcast memberships. We're only 4 away from hitting our goal. It doesn't look like we're going to hit that goal, unfortunately, but that's cool. But WG wasn't just enough for him to gift 5 Salty Nerd Podcast memberships. He had to do a $5 super chat, and he says 1 small super chat for nerds, but then he follows it up with a $50 super chat. 1 giant super chat for Nerdkind. WG, you are an OG in my opinion. Thank
That's
you
pretty
so
gangster.
much. Thank you so much for that support, and just in time too, because we need to restock the fridge out here at the Salty Nerd Studios. Guys, we could talk about this way more. Oh, in fact, WG, being the original gangster, just gifted 5 Salty Nerd Podcast memberships. So we've hit our goal of 20. We got 21
Goal
for the
hit.
show. Thank you. And Def Row member for 20 months. Jesus, 20 months. Remember the 5th of November. Send
Amen to
her
that.
packing.
Yep.
Send her packing with all of her fake accents. Guys,
There's a lot of
we had a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it. We could talk about this way more. In fact, Brian and Shane from the Popcast are going to talk about this way more in about
Huzzah!
half an hour. So,
Link is
Brian,
in chat. I just dropped it.
yes, Brian, why don't you give us your final thoughts and tell people where they can find more of you?
Well, you can find me at the Popcast Live. So just go to that link. I don't know if it actually popped up in chat. It probably didn't. Go to that link and go to at the Popcast Live. And that's where we do our Unleashed show. And we used to do it on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. And it used to be about pop culture and no politics. And now it's mostly politics. And we're figuring out when we're going to do it. Right now, Saturday's working out, but it's not going to work out all the time. So I hope you guys can come check it out. It's good. We're going to do it in 25 minutes. We're going to go live. We're going to go hard.
Yeah, and guys, if you stay tuned to the end of the stream, it auto redirects you to that channel that Brian was just talking about. So you can bookmark it or come back to it at any point.
Yeah.
And Brian and Shane are excellent news commentators. I highly recommend checking them out.
And I take my pants off for the stream. Like I'm completely nude from the waist down.
Yep, bottomless stream.
Yeah, well,
good
bottomless.
stuff.
Bottomless, unleashed, full tilt. Well, let's tilt it a little to the left, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Speaking of being tilted a little bit to the left, Dutch Butters is not here, but Culture Casino is Mr. Casino. Any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
I look, this is a great stream. Well done, Mr. Kadish. I will say that you can find me at Culture Casino on YouTube and on Rumble and elsewhere. You can also find me at That Game Place, the latest game channel with myself and the folks from That Park Place. Do check out that channel. We are growing, and we need more of you. You want to talk real video game news? We do that. We are not like Kotaku. You'll get news rather than, whose sleeping bag we jump into. So check us out. I'd appreciate it.
And speaking of real news, we have our special guest panelist today, Alan Ning from Film Threat. If you guys aren't following Film Threat, there's a link pinned in the description and in chat. Be sure to go subscribe to their channel. They have great stuff over there. Chris Gore is a legend, in my opinion. But Alan Ning is very close second. Alan, any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yeah, no, well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. You could find me on Film Thread on everything. We are doing a election live stream. It will be probably the least political election live stream. And I'll tease this. It may or may not happen, but we are working on a guest. And if this guest shows up, it is going to blow your minds, and you'll be talking about it. If we can actually get this guest,
President Donald Trump.
if only I could tell you.
He's like, I'm supposed to be on an election thing right now, but I'm doing your stream.
If only I could tell you. It'll blow your mind.
All right. Well, Tom Connors Jr., any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
You can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark, doing Mead Radio once in a while. We have our new channel, Merc, Midnight's Edge Retrospectives and Classics. Check that out. Midnight's Edge Espanol, that's a thing. I don't usually pop in there because I can't speak Spanish, but those guys do. Other than that, you can find me on X and all the other good places, and they let me talk here once in a while. Thanks.
Good stuff. And the Lord of the Shelves, the King of the Pineapple Pizza, Odin of OMB
I
Reviews.
need more shelves to Odin, by the way.
Yes.
I know the feeling.
Seriously.
Any final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
Yeah, you can find me over at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, all the platforms, of course, over on Twitter/X, right for geeksygamers.com every Sunday as well for my box office breakdown. And final thoughts would be, Alan, I just want you to know that you are so appreciated, and I do not like how Chris treats you on the Friday shows, especially.
Chris is a great guy.
Yes. He's mean to you. He's mean to you on those shows, and I don't like it.
Mean.
Stop Asian hate.
I know. He eats the dogs and the cats.
Hashtag that shit. Hashtag it. All right,
Eating
guys.
the dogs, eating the cats. Sorry.
Yes. Want to give a big shout out to everyone who supported us during this live stream, all of our wonderful gifters of memberships. I promise new membership stuff is coming. We have a lot of people who are members, and if you go to our membership playlist, you can find all the members content there that you guys can enjoy. In fact, we just got one more live stream, or I should say one more super chat, super sticker for $9.99 coming in from Westfield 90. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate that. I want to give a big shout out to Splatoon for Trump, Foxhound, Late Night with Cat podcast, Shorty Short, The Seaman, The Astro Nerd Boy, Kalikioki, Suki D in Utz, Patriotic Gestalt, Westfield 90, and the OG himself, WG. Thank you so much for your support. That has been fantastic. And guys, I know that it's usually like bad luck for me to announce who's going to be on the show next, but I'm hoping that by announcing it, it kind of like locks him in publicly so that he doesn't bail on me. Gary from Nerdrotic is going to be on our post-election live stream next week.
Woo!
We're either going to be doing a struggle session, or we're going to be rubbing people's faces in our inherent victory. But Gary is going to be with us. So if you're a big fan of Nerdrotic, as we all are, be sure to be here next week for that. I want to thank my fantastic panel nerds for being here. And until next Saturday, same salty time, same salty channel. Stay salty, my friends.